moment in history. This was how the first major set of agreements between Israelis and Palestinians was sealed. It was through the Oslo Accords that the new Palestinian Authority became responsible for education in Gaza and across the West Bank. In the quarter of a century that has passed since then, there have been many editions of school textbooks. Observers say they contain a lot of hate.
Children are essentially taught to hate Jews, to hate Israelis, and to be part of a struggle. And that struggle involves jihad and their own martyrdom.
Is there any sign that the textbooks are getting any better? And should we in Britain be worried about them? My name is Michael Daventry. I'm the foreign editor of the Jewish News, and you're watching The Sunday View. In the next few weeks, 1.3 million Palestinian children will begin a new year of education in Gaza and the West Bank. As they come back after the summer holidays, they'll be ready to learn from the newest editions of their school textbooks, covering a range of subjects. Observers of Palestinian education will be looking at the textbooks too, but for a different reason. They want to see what the books say about Israel, Jews, and the occupation of the West Bank.
Textbooks in the Middle East are uniquely authoritative, unlike in the UK where there are lists of textbooks in the curriculum and teachers can make choices, principals can make choices. That's not the case in the Middle East. You have one book, one grade, one subject. There isn't a great deal of printed material around, so these textbooks, are not taken extremely seriously by young people.
That's why the content of these textbooks matters. Like this writing exercise for Year 7 students. It shows a digger with a Star of David at work as it excavates beneath the mosques of the Temple Mount. The textbook asks students to write a paragraph. What do you think the artist is trying to convey? This cartoon was featured in a recent study of the textbooks sponsored by the European Union. It says the cartoon reproduces a conspiracy that Jews and the West are out to destroy the Muslim character of Jerusalem and Palestine. Other textbooks have been even less subtle. This here was a question from a book used in maths lessons. It asks students to add together the total number of Palestinians killed in the Intifadas, the violent uprisings against Israel. The correct answer includes not just those who died while fighting the Israeli armed forces, but also suicide bombers who struck shopping centres and buses. And then there's this masked Palestinian boy aiming a slingshot at approaching soldiers. It's a physics exercise about elastic energy. Now, the West Bank is under Israeli occupation, and some argue that is why Israel's military presence should be a constant feature of school textbooks, much as it is a constant feature of Palestinian daily life. But lobby groups connected to both of Britain's main political parties say Palestinian textbooks go much further than that.
There is a curriculum in the Palestinian territories that validates and reinforces ideas around violent resistance, of hatred towards Jews and Israelis, a rejection of the very concept of the Israeli state altogether.
Another issue is that the material school children are given tries very hard to avoid mentioning Israel by name. That EU-sponsored study we spoke about found Palestinian textbooks prefer terms like Zionist or Zionist occupation when talking about Israel's government, its state, or its police or armed forces. The study found passages about the conflict were 10 times more likely to use the word Zionist than Israeli, and even when the word Israel does appear, it's often within quotation marks.
So there is a rejection of peacemaking or reconciliation with Israel. And what there is in its stead is an increased amount of anti-Semitism, anti-Semitic tropes from early Islam to anti-Semitic tropes of today. Jews being liars, swindlers, usurpers. There was a celebration of terrorists and terrorism.
Britain donates large sums to help educate Palestinian children. Some of the money goes to UNWRA, the United Nations agency that supports refugees and runs schools. Some goes direct to the Palestinian Authority. We asked the Palestine Mission in London to speak to the Sunday View about the content of school textbooks, but they told us no one was available. UNWRA told us it had a zero-tolerance policy for incitement to hatred and violence in its schools, and that it used a digital platform to ensure its learning materials were used within United Nations principles. Jewish news sources say around £105 million of British taxpayer money has been spent in the last 5 years on teachers. The UK government says it does not provide money for Palestinian textbooks and only funds the teachers. But an investigation by this newspaper earlier this year found there's been very little scrutiny of the curriculum in recent years.
I do think it's incumbent upon the government to look more critically now at how aid money has been used in the Palestinian territories, because if we're cutting it for life-saving projects in Africa, we've actually got the moral legitimacy to say to the Palestinian Authority, I'm sorry, but if you don't change your curriculum and start using our funding to teach children about the importance of peace and tolerance and respect, then we won't be able to carry on supporting your educational program through the salaries for teachers. That's the point I think we're getting to.
Campaigners say it's only by using less hostile lesson plans that Palestine's future generation can be taught that peace is a possibility. But they add that right now, that feels like a very distant prospect.